Our next presenter is an independent scholar from Colorado. The title of his talk is The World Problematique, Proliferating Projections, Human Palavering, and Plummeting Off Climatological Cliffs. Tim Lyons. Yeah.
That there thing is a guitar case.
Should I throw change in?
You can throw change in it. So, Lance, are you keeping time here?
Yeah.
Will you definitively cut me off at 6 minutes so I have time to do that?
6 minutes from now.
6 minutes from the end.
Oh.
Is that clear? Because I'm going to give part of the talk and then I'm going to sing the ballad of Alfred Korzybski. Yes, so we'll do that. I don't know how long that takes, but maybe 6 minutes. And the ballad of Alfred Korzybski came about because I was writing this here book that I'm going to talk a little bit about. And then I remembered Bruce Springsteen saying, I'm tired of sitting here writing this book. So the title of the book is like the title on the thing that you just heard. Problematiques, Palavering, PIPS. PIPS, by the way, is an acronym for People in Power. And if you don't like acronyms, you should read more David Foster Wallace. Projections and the World Crisis. And this is just the introduction. And I'm only going to read like a page or two of the introduction. But I'll give you an overview of the book. So, good light up here. It's a book about how language affects behaviors, individual, academic, and collective. Section 1 deals with a narrative of somebody I know, dealing mostly with extensional goings on about how intentional matters can often mess one up in, let's say, dealing with women, the military draft, the black flies of the great North Woods up in Canada, and dealings with the ever-present LE, in case you don't know, means law enforcement. Section 2 is a quasi-narrative shifting toward intentional goings-on with extensional goings-on now taking a back seat and shifting from Canadian black flies and freight hopping to institutions of so-called higher learning, acronymed as IOSCHL. And then there's section 3, which brings it all back home, as Bob would say, with an analysis of linking language to collective goings-on. That's an overview of the book. I'm just going to read like a page from the introduction. And the first section is called The World Problematique, which comes from the book I'm about to mention. Over half a century ago, in the Limits to Growth, the Club of Rome, a group of scientists, educators, economists, humanists, industrialists, and national and international civil servants, whoever they are, gathered to discuss the quote-unquote world problematique, what they call the subject of, quote, staggering scope of the present and future predicament of man. That's from the book The Limits to Growth. Mostly in connection to environmental matters. Through their work fostered important understandings in those who gave it their attention. Such policy initiatives and actions as their work might have inspired have proved, to put the case mildly, inadequate. Considering that laughable inadequacy, let's start with an evaluation that, considering the evidence behind it, comes close to qualifying as a fact, and perhaps even an over-obvious truism. The Earth, at least the parts of it affected by human beings, which means pretty much all of it these days, the molten core perhaps accepted, seems headed for disaster even more quickly than seemed the case only a few years ago. People familiar with the technical means that might enable humans to halt an already disastrous plunge toward even greater disasters than have already occurred tell us that humans have at their disposal the means to stop or at least slow this process, but the situation gets worse every day, and the rate of decline seems to be increasing. I'll read one more paragraph, and then I'll sing a song. Watching many, and I'm just reading this paragraph because it mentions that Korzybski fellow. Does anybody not know who he is? Watching many humans act, particularly it seems people in power, the pips, though plenty of the mostly powerless United States voters also qualify, with many also powerless millions planet-wide apparently not doing much better, and taking note of the ways they think, one might apply the word insane, or at least Alfred Korzybski's unsane, although I think he borrowed that from somebody else. I'm actually not sure about that. I lost the place here. Oh, as many people continue to act not only against their own interests, but contrary to so-called common sense, a term with admittedly a rather vague referent and offering a notable conundrum, as common modes of thinking often contain little sense, and as the ability to think or communicate sensibly does not seem all that common. I think that will do. Oh, I promised somebody out there that I would read this quotation, but I'm not. This is a little out of context. So this is from Edward Sapir, and then I will sing a song. Human beings do not live in the objective world alone, nor alone in the world of social activity as ordinarily understood, but are very much at the mercy of the particular language which has become the medium of expression for their society. It is quite an illusion to imagine that one adjusts to reality essentially without the use of language, and that language is merely an incidental means of solving specific problems of communication or reflection. The fact of the matter is that the quote-unquote real world is to a large extent unconsciously built up on the language habits of the group. And that should do with that. All right.
6 minutes.
Nice. I hope this guitar is in tune.
No, there's a guitar.
There's a guitar. Yeah.
Schrodinger's guitar.
When you stick these things on plane, you gotta tune the strings over that. 4 times to get it. Oops. All right. Now this has a chorus that you can sing along. Sounds close enough. All right. Now, first I'm going to sing the chorus, and if you feel like singing along on subsequent verses, you can do so. Is that clear? Yeah. Alfred, oh, I better step back from the microphone. Alfred Korzybski, he came to over here from across the sea. Had a few ideas, stated them right clear, out in an intentional so-called reality. There was this guy from Poland, he came here long ago. talked about the way we talk, and sometimes he would show that the symbol-making species find a time along the way. Sometimes they act like monkeys, yeah, that's what he would say. Alfred Korzybski, he came to over here from across the sea. Had a few ideas, he stated them right clear, about in an extension of so-called reality. He came over here some time ago to see what he could see. He talked a lot about science and its links to sanity. Talked about abstractions, he talked about the mind. He spoke of interactions among members of humankind. Sing along, Alfred Korzybski. He came to over here from across the sea. He had a few ideas and stated them right clear about in an extension of so-called reality. He said we was a time binding last things on earth, though sometimes we're just wandering blind and wondering what it's worth. He said he can pass our knowledge on as time goes passing by, but we don't really do it all that well. He talked about the reasons why. Alfred Korzybski, he came to over here from across the sea. He had a few ideas, stated them right clear, about in an extension of so-called reality. And now I gotta flip the page over so I can continue. I should have done this a few minutes ago, but I done forgot. He weren't no Aristotelian, he weren't nobody's fool. He weren't no Euclidean neither, though he learned that stuff in school. He said you'd best be careful, best map them things with care, 'cause you're liable to make a mess of things, that you'd best beware. Alfred Korzybski, he came over here from across the sea. He had a few ideas, and he stated them right clear, about in an extension of so-called reality. Well, language, it affects the ways that people think and write. It affects the way they rule themselves and how they end up fighting. It affects the way they do or die. It affects the way they think. And though it don't affect the whiskey, it affects the way they drink. Alfred Korzybski, he came to over here from across the sea. He had a few ideas, they did them right clear, about in an extension of so-called reality. About in an extension of so-called reality. Thank you kindly, folks. Thank you kindly. Everybody wants to be like Elvis.
Wow, and here I was expecting a polka, but that's great.